This episode is brought to you by Portland Distro. If you like underground music, movies, and more, go to portlanddistro.com for licensed merch, vinyl, CDs, and more. Plug in the discount code 10OFF, TENOFF, for a 10% discount at portlanddistro.com. Greetings, my friends, and welcome to this week's episode of Everything Went Black. The year is drawing to a close, and we have just a few more episodes left. And I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break to enjoy the closing of the year and reflect on 2023. It was a very interesting year. Not all good, but a lot of good, some bad, and ultimately looking forward to 2024 for a better year. This week, my old friend Jeremy Hush joins us. I met Jeremy several decades ago, it seems, when he was traveling with the band Baroness, and through my ignorance, I was completely unaware of his incredible artistic vision. And in this episode, I hope to explore some of that as a creative output, his Arthur Machen-esque adventures into the underworld and things of that nature. So this should be an incredibly interesting episode, and Jeremy is a fascinating guy. I'd also like to shout out my brothers in the horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse, the ever-growing horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. Of course, I'm referring to Brandon Legion, who kicks off the week with Horror Wolf 666. Next up, we have Jackie Smith's Into the Necrosphere, the best metal-oriented extreme music podcast on the internet today. Of course, Wednesdays are Everything Went Black. Thursdays, Necro Thursday, is Necromaniacs with myself, Mike Scandato, and Jeff Kashid. Friday brings us Spitball Media, featuring Mike Scandato's brother, John Draper. Saturday is a day off. Go out, enjoy yourself. You need to get away from the internet and experience the real world. Sundays, Carl Hikara returns with Soul Knox. Carl and I are working collaboratively on the Darkness Weaves sub-series, which we alternate episodes on each other's shows to discuss the work of the great Carl Edward Wagner. Our newest member, Cheyenne, brings us Iblis Manifestations, and you just have to keep your eyes and ears open for a new episode because they drop in from the sky, from the void. If you like the show, I please urge you to share it with your friends. Check us out on social media, Everything Went Black on Instagram and Facebook, or you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. If you really want to support the show, join our Patreon. There are $1, $5, and sponsor feeds of $25 a month. You get bonus material, early access to episodes, and nonstop fun and adventure over there. I met you over 10 years ago, man, when you were traveling with Baroness. You were doing merch for them, and it's got to be like maybe 13 years ago, maybe. That's the first time I ever run into you.
Yeah, it was forever ago. We just saw Baroness play in Philly here the other night, and they've been together for like 23 years, and I started touring with them 20 years ago, like exactly. So it's been a long freaking time. Yeah.
Funniest thing about that is the first time I ever saw Baroness was in we played a basement show with them in the basement of North 6 in Brooklyn, and on there was like 20 people there, and to see them now selling out these like gigantic venues, and it's just incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to see. Yeah, yeah. It's great, like just seeing like how many people from so far back are still running around. It's just amazing.
It's always good, man, because people, so there's like waves of people that they do music for a while, or they go on the road or do whatever, and then a couple years go by, then they just disappear, and then you run into them and they're just completely out of it. I mean, making sometimes like being on the road and doing this stuff can be counterproductive at times, but it's good to see people out there still being active. And John's a great guy, and all the
Oh,
success in the world to that dude. He's so talented.
hell yeah.
So I follow you on Instagram, and I'm a huge fan of your artwork. But the main thing that grabs me is these descents into the underworld that you do, and all this work that you do in the caves and stuff. So what do you do, man? How did you get into all that stuff?
Oh man, when I was a kid, we used to hit like the tourist caves, like they just see on along the freeway down south. And years there was nothing. And then in high school, my dad retired from the Navy, and we went to Tennessee and stayed there. And I started hearing rumors about caves on people's property. So we just started hopping fences and running through the woods until we find these caves. And these caves are like 2 miles deep. They're like massive. And so I got into wild caving like in high school, but I didn't really get into the caving community until I moved to Philadelphia, when I found out there was like an actual like worldwide community that does this stuff, that explores, and it's big on conservation and all this stuff. It's a pretty amazing community, and it's very secretive. It hides really well. It's everywhere.
I had no idea that there was like an active community in cave diving, or cave exploring. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Like anywhere you go, there's caves and stuff, and they're all different in different parts of the country, different parts of the world. There's places that people travel from across the world to America just for specific caves. It's just incredible. It's like it's uh, it's such a narrow scene. Not a lot of people can do that kind of stuff, and that's like one of the draws for it. And is that there's a crowd, but it's not like a mainstream crowd ever. And you're seeing things that like so few people get to see. And there's all kinds of things down there. There's like you get into these spaces that are just like, it's like yeah, they're caves, they're old, but they feel ancient. There's like a crazy presence in some of these things. And and you start getting into this community, and the more trusted you are in this community, the more important caves you get to see and stuff. Like you've got people that are studying like indigenous people's like remains down in caves. Like we saw like a 13,000-year-old short-faced bear skeleton in the back of a cave and stuff. And there's just like all kinds of crazy stuff down there.
Now you see this really sparks my imagination,
Yeah.
because you and I both like were into a lot of the same kind of stuff. I think as far as like
Oh yeah.
literature and fiction, and I start thinking about Edgar Rice Burroughs and Pellucidar and all these like
Mhm.
underground kingdoms and Arthur Machen and all that sort of
Yeah,
stuff.
man.
And so did what's like the most intense stuff you saw down there? I mean, it's like I imagine you just in like complete darkness and with like illumination by like your whatever light you bring with you. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of safety measures and stuff we take, so it's not really as scary as it can be intimidating and stuff. Because every you never go alone. You're always with a group, and everybody has to have like a minimum of 3 lights and stuff. So it's like you're not going to get stuck without a light and stuff. But you get to some of these caves, and like we're usually underground for an average of 6 hours and stuff. So it's like you imagine like hiking for like 3 hours. You can't just step out of it. You got to hike all the way back. So that could be part of it. And like sometimes it's like a obstacle course underground, and some of them are easy, and some of them are difficult, and some of them are really fucking weird, and some of them are real difficult. And it's like you get through it, and the harder it is to get through, usually the better the payoff is afterwards, because that means fewer and fewer people go to it. And it's almost like an endurance race. You're like going through these places, And it's rare that you go into a cave that like nobody's been in. That's pretty rare. It's usually caves that are pretty well explored. Even if they're finding new stuff in it, you're going to be going on a routes that other people have already been, and you're usually with somebody who already knows the cave and stuff. But like, yeah, it can be, yeah, it can be real intimidating to get that far back into a cave, and then like it's like, oh, it's still all the way back out and stuff. But it's just magical places down there. It's like you have these beautiful formations and these epic scenery. Sometimes you find these rooms that are like just gigantic spaces. It's like, how can there be such a gigantic space like underground and nobody knows about it? And like it's such an adventure. That's the big thing. Is this is just like you get there and you just get so full of energy because the adventure is so crazy.
Now you mentioned that there's like indigenous peoples, artifacts and things like that. And like ancient skeletons and stuff. Is that like a reservation sort of thing where there are like a preserve? Is it so people cannot take these things out of those areas? Like, is it protected by some sort of agency or something like that?
Yeah, if it's got something like that in it, unless it was like, and there's always like, some farmer out there that doesn't let anybody in his cave, and it turns out there's something like historically important down there. But like, if there's some kind of remains like that in it, it's heavily guarded and stuff. So it's like, whether it's like a Forest Service or just like, nowadays trail cameras are like pretty easy to come by and stuff. And there's usually hidden cameras around to try and catch vandals or any kind of thing like that. But yeah, if there's something important there, it's probably really well guarded, or it's in such a hard place to get to that it guards itself. So yeah, it's like when we saw that short-faced bear, it was like going in there, I was like, how can this be here if anybody can just go in here? And it's like you have to go through some shit to get to it. And when you get to it, you're like, oh, there we go. It's like, yeah, not a lot of people are getting back here. But then it's a whole mystery of like, how did it get back here? It's like 13,000 years, like, the landscape has changed. There's been upheavals, there's been floods, there's been all kinds of crazy stuff. And it's like, when did it end up here? Was there an entrance closer to here? And then you got to start wondering, is there an entrance close to here? Is there more tunnel that you don't know is there? It's one of the big things about caving is it's like, if you're climbing a mountain or something, when you get to the top, but in a cave, you never know when you're at the bottom of it. You never know when you're at the end of it. It could keep going. On the other side of the wall, there could be a massive cave, that nobody's ever seen and stuff. So it's like, it's just the amazing part of it that there's so much mystery involved with it.
Just in the last like 3 months, I read two short stories about being in ancient caves. I've been exploring. I don't know if you're familiar with Carl Edward Wagner, the writer.
Yeah.
Yeah, just recently, I do like a collaborative sub series on this podcast called Darkness Weaves, and I guess maybe because Wagner is like so obscure, and unfortunately, most of his work is out of print. We've been going through his short stories, and now we're in the Kane short stories, and actually, next week's episode is coverage of a short story called Two Suns Setting, which has a lot to do with going into a cave and finding, the crown of an ancient giant king and saber-toothed tigers and albino animals and stuff like that. And that's why I wanted to talk to you, because like, have you ever run into any kind of like fauna, like underground, like some unusual like creatures or anything like that?
Oh yeah. Especially like when it comes to like plant life, like the funguses you find down there are like bizarre. It's super alien land, like life down there. It's like you'll have these things. It's like it's usually living off like because caves are created by water, the path of water cutting through the mountain and all the way down and stuff. So it's kind of like a drain for a lot of things. And so you'll find like bones and stuff down there, but usually you'll find like just like old wood and like tree limbs. And on that, like any kind of organic thing, it's like you'll find this like just like spider web of like this like super white like just like fungus that strings out all over the place. And like you'll see so many different kinds, and there's most of them that I've run into have already been studied, but people are always looking for more because there's a lot of science behind a lot of these funguses that are growing down there in total darkness and stuff. And yeah, we've run into lots of like like albino crayfish. You see them a lot and stuff. These tiny little crawdads and stuff, but they're white and lots of little fish and stuff. I haven't found, I've never run anything big. There's always lots of bats and stuff. And like every cave's full of raccoons, but I've never seen one in a cave and stuff. I did run into a mountain lion in Tennessee like years ago, and that was a close call. But
Mountain lion.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Wow, dude.
yeah. I've got a black lab German Shepherd here that's about 100 pounds. It's probably about the size of that thing. It was pretty fucking scary and stuff. But yeah,
I
it
mean,
was
that's
like
like,
cave.
that's like life threatening, like, for real. You know what I
No,
mean?
yeah, I was in Tennessee, and they're fairly rare because you know the locals they'll shoot a mountain lion and stuff, just because it's fun to shoot at, or they're scared of it, whatever. But they've killed off most things around there that are fun to shoot at. But this cave, like I've gone back and like done a little bit of a survey, like a little bit of a mapping of it. But you've got it. It's like kind of a crouchy, crawly cave, like that's an old creek bed, and it goes back 113 feet before you get to like the main room. And right as you go in, like there's like a little side passage, like you can just see the sunlight coming in. It's a hole that's like just enough to like squeeze out and stuff. I've crawled in and out of it for fun. And me and this guy took a couple of girls in there one time to go check out this cave, and I'd been there like 1,000 times. And we go in there, and as I'm going in there, it smells like something's dead. And I was like, oh, it's probably raccoons like dragging in dead shit or something. And we're back in there for a few hours, like climbing around in this cave. And we're coming back out, and I'm the first one coming out. And I'm basically on all fours because the ceiling's that low. And as I pull up there, I see this thing move out of the corner of my eye. And it's up by that smaller hole, that smaller exit. And it's just this big patch of yellow fur. It's huge. And it just fucking shrugs its shoulder at me and just looks the other way. And I'm crouching there, and I'm like motioning for everybody to like go behind me and stuff to get out of the cave. Because it's like if somebody's gonna get mauled, it's gotta be me. It was my idea to go here. I gotta get mauled, that kind of thing. I would hate for someone else to get mauled on one of my trips and stuff, but that's the closest I've ever come into something crazy like that. I don't know what it was up with it. Is it just lazy as shit? Is it already eating some raccoon or something? But like we got lucky that way.
Yeah, I would imagine it probably had fed recently. Otherwise, you probably would have ended up being a meal for it. You know.
Yeah, just pissed off. Like holy cow. Yeah.
That's like it's most of us live in civilization. I mean, a lot of people that myself included, definitely. I
Yeah.
don't come into contact with too many wild animals, but I have come into contact with wild animals, and it's a real trip when you are in the proximity of something that's a predator that
Yeah.
and it's like a completely wild thing, you know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
unpredictable, and it's like a very
Yeah.
very humbling sort of feeling.
Yeah, it's definitely a step back in time, like where this is gonna be hand to hand and might not work out so well. But yeah, it's crazy. But you
Yeah,
just
I
never know
mean,
what you're gonna find in these places. So yeah.
and especially with cats too, man, because like I have a cat. My cat's like
Yeah.
7 pounds, but my cat will fuck me up too, man. And that's like a 7 pound cat. Imagine what like
Yeah.
you're saying like 100 pound like mountain lion could do to you.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. And you're on all fours, you can't even stand up in this fucking space, you know? At most,
One of
I've
the
probably got a rock to fight with, like, geez.
one of the things I was thinking of too is just like you mentioned before how it being sort of a physical endurance kind of thing. And now having it seems like you might have less oxygen down there too. So how does that affect your like sort of aerobic abilities down under the ground like that?
Well, I've never had an air issue and stuff. Like if you go out in the Northwest, you get caves that like have more of a gas issue where you have to take like, I don't know, they have gas meters and stuff so you can test the air. But here on the East Coast, our caves are pretty big and they all breathe pretty well and stuff. That's like it's like the temperatures between the hot and the cold keep the cave literally like breathing in and out and stuff. So I've never had an air issue and stuff, but I've been in caves around here like a bunch of times, but then somebody takes a trip in there and they talk about how like the air was bad and stuff. And it's like, you never know if that's like, they're underneath farms and stuff. So it could be like what they're fertilizing with, or who knows what is like soaking into the earth and stuff. One thing about the caving community is it's kind of like you see the first sign of like, like big catastrophe coming because it happens there first. If there's something bad building up, if things are going wrong, the signs will show down there first. It's pretty crazy because it's just the natural drain. Yeah, it's the natural drain for everything and stuff. So yeah, there's always.
What would be an example of that?
Well, they're studying stalactites because they work kind of like trees. They build up in rings as they build up and stuff, and they can actually, I don't know how they do it, but they're studying the rings, and they can tell from the way these rings are of they're, I don't know, they could tell like what kind of storms and like what kind of like catastrophes happened at a certain era because they're hundreds and hundreds of years old. It takes like 80 to 250 years to get a cubic inch of like a stalactite and stuff. So it's like there's a lot that they're studying through that, and just like you could study the walls themselves because you're literally like looking through like a cut through of the mountain and stuff, so you can see where things have erupted and re-landed in place, been turned upright and stuff. But also in caves, it's like especially there's always a drama where there's like chemical companies or illegally dumping or something like that. And that's usually a big sign, and all that's like our waterways that goes into everything and stuff, whether it goes into like farms and fields like that, or it goes into our aquifers and stuff. It's like it all feeds through these caves and stuff. And like, so if things start acting up down there and stuff, that's when you have to start alerting other groups about like what's going on. And so it's crazy. I haven't got a chance to really like dive into the science side of it as much as I want to yet and stuff. You have to build up to being like useful to get on these scientific trips more and more. So I'm working my way up to that.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So I've seen you quite a bit over the last year or so at these Cadabra Records, sort of events, and I've had Chris on the podcast a number of times, and
oh yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get connected with those guys? I mean, I forgot how I found out about Cadabra Records. Actually, one day I was on their website and I was like, man, look at all this cool stuff. And I saw that you had done some artwork for them, and Romano and Joe Kienberger, and, people that I knew. And I just started buying records, and then got to become friends with Chris, and I see him pretty frequently, and then these events happen. So how did you get connected with them?
I'm trying to remember exactly how it was too. It was a number of years ago. Like I met Jonathan and talking about these projects, and it's like I've always, it's kind of the high school dream to be doing like like art for these like classic horror stories that I always loved. And I can't remember exactly how we crossed paths the first time and stuff, but it was here in Philly. So
yeah, it's such an interesting niche sort of thing. It's like, vinyl only. I'm glad that none of this stuff is digital, because I think it would be really kind of selling short the creative expression of the whole thing. So, I mean, you need to look at this thing in large format,
Yeah, it's a whole package. Everything's done with so much care. It's like the artwork, all the background information and stuff, and like all the artists and musicians, the readers, everything involved and stuff. It's like all really specifically handpicked and stuff. And it's just a beautiful product.
Yeah, a few months ago, I had John Paget on the podcast, and that's like,
Nice.
Like in some ways he's synonymous with Thomas Ligotti. You know what I mean? It's almost like now when I read a Ligotti short story, I hear John Paget's voice in my head.
Yes. Yeah, man, he's the man for it and stuff. But yeah, man, it's just so nice to be a part of like these projects, like especially like I got to do a number of projects with like Fabio Frizzi and stuff, and that was a huge deal because like you know, I grew up on those movies like The Beyond and Zombie, and now I've gotten to work on the records for them, and it was a huge deal because the artwork for that stuff is like they're classics. It's like these classic paintings from like the 70s and 80s and stuff, and it's like a really hard thing to follow, and it's just so cool to like see the Fabio Frizzi when he's got his merch table set up and he's got all these like old classic horror paintings and stuff from Italy and stuff. And then I have like my records up there too. And it's like, holy cow. It's just hard to imagine it's real.
Yeah, that's the thing about those Italian films, like all those gialli that came out, and the poster art and the movie artwork is always these incredible paintings, with a lot of the use of a lot of color and that sort of thing. And I'm a huge fan of all that stuff too.
Oh yeah.
Now, is that what it's have you always been a huge horror fan, like movies and fiction and all that sort of stuff?
Oh yeah. Yeah. From like really young age, I always loved horror movies.
Now
Yeah.
Cadabra is almost synonymous with weird fiction, cosmic horror. Was that some of the stuff that you read earlier on? Was like Lovecraft and Arthur Machen and that sort of stuff?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's like a lot of the stuff like Arthur Machen, I didn't get into until like late in the day and stuff. And like M.R. James, like is like one of my absolute favorites. And I didn't get to that until like late in the day. It was like before I was doing like Cadabra stuff, but it was like before I knew about Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe and like all the big easy ones and stuff. Robert Bloch, I always liked his stuff a lot, and Matheson and stuff like.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing stuff.
Matheson's like one of the super prolific, man. I mean, he's screenwriter, short stories, his novels, of course, the Incredible Shrinking Man, I Am Legend, some
man.
of the
And
most.
I think it was Legend of Hell House.
Yep, that's another great one. Yep.
That's like still like one of my favorite movies of all time. And I think that was the first thing I read is because I loved that movie so much. And, it's just so good.
Yeah, I think the first Matheson I read was I think it was I Am Legend was the first thing I found years ago.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think it was as a result of the Omega Man and the Vincent Price I Am Legend. Vincent Price one's incredible. It's so bleak feeling,
and bizarre. It's so bizarre too. It's like they're like zombie vampires or something. It's real strange. And I was raised on that Omega Man, that Charlton Heston one. I love that movie. It's like it was on TV when I was a kid all the time. I used to watch it all the time. It's amazing.
Have you read the novel?
I haven't read that one. No, no. But I'm pretty sure Vincent Price wasn't very close to it, and Charlton Heston probably wasn't either. So
no, definitely not. But the Price one is like it's like such a far out like take on the whole thing, and anything with Vincent Price is always like I'll always check anything out with Vincent Price in it for sure.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So your involvement with the convent down in Philly, I'm not that familiar with what that is. I just keep seeing stuff going on down there. So you want to break that down for me?
Yeah, that's our gallery here in Philadelphia. Up in the Northeast, like some friends of ours bought this old convent years ago, and it was right when we needed to move to a new place, and it'd been abandoned for a couple of years. So I talked them into letting me and Sophie move in. It was like we'll work the bugs out for you and stuff. And a dozen nuns used to live here, and it's a pretty massive space, but it has like a whole chapel on the front of the building with like stained glass windows and stuff. And it's only made for a dozen nuns, so it's not some big epic church and stuff, but it's a really nice gallery space. And then it has like a couple of side rooms, a part of the gallery. And it has like a whole enclosed event area of the building and stuff. And it's pretty nice. We've done a lot of shows in here for about 5 years, and then like COVID hit. So it's been about 3 years since we had an event, and then we just had one this past Saturday. So that was like our first event back open. And so next year we'll start doing events again on a regular basis. But it's
See,
been a while. But
what was the event that just happened?
oh yeah, it was there's some local Philadelphia people that like make homemade like slasher films and like horror movies and stuff. So it's like I was like, all right, I want to try and do some of that. So like we were talking to them about doing a viewing here. They'd done it at like Philomoka and stuff, and it was like a corpse for Christmas. And since it's coming up on Christmas time, they wanted to do a holiday event and stuff. So we had like a screening here, and we can seat 40 people in there, and we have like a whole like screen and projector system and stuff and sound system. So it was a nice like little theater, and it was like packed to the gills, and a really fun night. And it's like the whole cast and crew are all artists and stuff. So we did a art show with all of them in the room, and then did a viewing of the movie. Just had like a big hangout night. It was great.
Man, I would totally have gone to something like that if I'd have known about it. Because I mean, actually, this past Saturday, I was in Asbury Park for a Krampus festival during the day,
Oh,
and
nice.
it was like it would have been like a 40-minute drive, or if probably not even, to get down to Philly to check that out. How would I find out about these things? Is there like just on Instagram, like, keep your eyes out, that sort of
Yeah,
thing?
yeah. Instagram's our most used thing, and Facebook as well and stuff. But mostly Instagram's what we've been doing. And yeah, like we have an email list, but it's been like 3 years, so it's like getting that up and running again, circulating. And because yeah, like with COVID, like it was hard to tell what was going to come up next. It's like, are we ever going to have events again? And like, is there ever going to be a gathering? So there was some unsure times for a while there. So it's nice to get back to it, have people over, and yeah, man, it was nice. Like we've done well. One of the first things we did here is we had David J from Bauhaus. He's played here 3 times and stuff. So yeah, yeah, 3 times. That was like one of our earliest events that we ever did here. And we don't usually do too many bands and stuff, but like we've done like music videos and yeah, lots of band photo shoots and stuff here. It's a pretty wild space. Like it's a church, but it's ours, so we get to do fun stuff with it.
Never been there, man. I need to keep my eyes open and check out the next thing that goes on down there next year.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you should just stop by because like like we tell the public it's by appointment only, except for on opening nights and stuff, because we also live here and stuff. But yeah, if you're ever around town, you just gotta swing by.
I mean, ideally, there'd be something cool going on that I could check out too, besides from
Yeah,
just chilling,
yeah.
But definitely, I mean,
Oh yeah.
it just seems like that last thing you mentioned with the slasher films, that's like so completely right up my alley. I would have really loved to check that out.
Yeah, man, it's pretty wild. That's like I used to say like, you're rich when you have like your home theater. Like that's like the sign for me of like when you've made it. And like so we have a total home theater in here now in the gallery. It's fucking epic. We used to do a lot of movie nights here. It was a lot of fun.
Um, so now with your artwork, how did you get in? Has that been a lifelong pursuit for you? Because obviously, I'm a huge fan, and the pieces that you've done are incredible. So, what got you interested in art? Do you have like a background in fine art or anything like that?
Yeah, man, I've been drawing since super early on. And it was always just my one constant thing and stuff. It's like I was a real fidgety kid, so like sitting down and drawing is like what I did. It was like 8 hours of school a day. I was just doodling and drawing and stuff, and it was just the one constant thing. It's like I went to art school in Savannah and stuff, but like yeah, it's like I went there, tried new things, and mostly came out of it wanting to do like what I'd already been doing, the way I'd been doing it and stuff. And yeah, man, it's been my one constant.
Yeah, most people I know that have gone to art school, it's that have a similar story. It's like they go and maybe pick up some technical things, but generally it doesn't. It's what they've been doing already. The work they've been doing was what they just continue doing. Did you feel like you got anything out of going to art school, maybe just on a technical level?
Yeah, for sure. It's like you know, like it's you get out of what you put into it, like I could definitely tried harder if I wanted to and stuff, but like the best thing college does for you is it gets you out of your hometown and it gets you in a community. Like especially for like art school, I was able to be into a community of other people doing art and stuff. So like you learn more from like the people you're around than you really do in the classroom. And that's usually the first thing I'll tell people when they talk about wanting to go to art school. Is I was like, man, go find other artists. Go hang out. Go to galleries and meet artists and hang out and talk to them and skip all the big bills and craziness because there's so much you can learn from other people.
Was there a component to your your education that had to do with like being exposed to like like art history, like older stuff that you may or may not have gotten into? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. But like for the most part, like when I was younger, like I didn't. It was the opposite. The old stuff was what was easy to find, and contemporary artists weren't so easy to find and stuff. Like I was always a big Bosch fan and an Albert Dürer fan. Those were like always like huge influences for me. But you can find them anywhere. And like I had like you know most of my influences came from like comics and like D&D books and
Oh,
stuff.
nice.
Like those are things I could more relate to. I was like I remember having like a Boris Vallejo book, but it's like
Oh
I
man.
couldn't I couldn't comprehend that stuff. I was like how he does that, and now it makes sense. Like I know how a lot of those realists work and stuff, and but it's just yeah, like I always loved like the big classics, but like it was really comics and all that kind of stuff that really hit home and like
What
really
one of the
focused
things
in
I
on
picked
that.
up from one of the things I picked up from you guys was a like a D&D like illustration book at the that Nightlands festival.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
the
thing was cool.
Ekphrastic Beast. Yeah, man,
Yeah.
that was our big COVID projects. I was talking with Jonica Stuckey. He's like an occult writer and stuff, and he was talking about how like like we might be out of work and we don't know how long. And it's like we should try and do something. So like we got together like a handful of us, like started suggesting artists. Like we got Joe Kineberger in there and our friend Ellie Gill and Nathan Reed, and the five of us just started talking about doing this basically like a Dungeons and Dragons bestiary book, and did a whole Kickstarter for it, and it did really well. It did better than we expected, and it just Kickstarter like it kept going up and up in budget. So the book got nicer and nicer. Suddenly we had like fabric covers, and we got guest artists, and yeah, it was a huge thing. It was like we didn't know how it was going to go and stuff. Like so, it's like oh, here's this thing. And it's like the world's like kind of going to hell, and it's like, will anyone even be interested in this kind of thing right now? Is it bad taste? And like it did really well, and we got Skinner to do like a guest piece in there, and Eric Roper. Both those artists are like two like big favorites of mine and stuff, and it was just amazing to get to make just monsters. There's nothing more fun than just drawing straight monsters.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I enjoyed that, man. That's one of the many things I picked up that weekend was that book. I got the tarot deck that you did.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, a bunch of stuff. Some of Romano's work I picked up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then a bunch of just like books. Like there's, Hippocampus Press was there and records and
Oh,
things
yeah.
like I had a
Yeah.
budget for that weekend, but I completely blew that budget within the first day.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah,
As
that
far as
cadaver
comics
event was
go,
great.
oh, sorry. Sorry, go ahead, Jeremy. I didn't mean to cut you
Oh, I
off.
was just about to say that cadaver event, like it had so many artists and writers there with their stuff. Like it was a big spending weekend.
Oh yeah, definitely. What comics were you into? You ever I mean, I'm a old school like comics fan. Like for me, I was like really into the Conan stuff and Barry Windsor Smith and P. Craig
Oh yeah.
Russell and stuff like that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Big time. Like Conan was like the first comic I ever like collected like consecutively. But yeah, I really liked like all the old like it was like Conan and it was horror stuff. That was basically what I was really liked. Like a lot of Dark Horse comics and stuff. Like had like all the Alien shorts. Those were really good, and the Predator shorts. Um, it's like they had a lot of oddball stuff. Dark Horse did. Then a lot of old EC comics. And a lot of these like kind of like lesser known like horror comics that were more of the magazine size, but they were like way out of date and stuff. Like I still try and pick those up whenever I find them. But like, yeah, like all that old like Conan stuff with like Barry Windsor Smith, Ernie Chan, and a bunch of those guys were like epic good.
Are you referring to eerie and creepy when you talk to those magazine size comics?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, there's a
those are some of my favorites ever, dude. I love those.
yeah. Most comic shops have some box like collecting a ton of dust, and it's full of those magazine styles like horror comics. I love them. So good.
Yeah, Warren Publishing, man. They had
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
they had Vampirella, they had Eerie, they had Creepy. They had like a it was kind of like heavy metal, but it was all black and white newsprint, and it was
Hmm.
their adult sci-fi comic book magazine. It was called 1999. Oh no, wait. First it was called 1984, right? Because that was the future
Yeah.
from the 70s. You know, from the 70s, 1984 is the future, right?
Yeah.
And then when 1984 came, they renamed it 1999 because that was like so far off into the future that by 1999, like everyone was going to be like riding around with a jetpack and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
it's like 2024, you know. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah. I love that stuff. Like I think it was. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but there was one that's where like Judge Dredd comes from. Is
oh,
that like it was
2000 AD, 2000 AD.
2000 AD? Okay, that's what I was mixing up with that. It's like
Yeah,
that's another one that was just like kind of this off to the side, a little more like horrific and brutal comics and stuff. It was so good.
that was Rogue Trooper, Strontium Dog, like all those like they're like sci-fi, but with like a very horror oriented like element to it.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's the fucking best. I love it when sci-fi is a little more on the horror side. That's yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
man. I do less the communion stuff and more of the alien
Oh
series
yeah.
stuff. You know,
Yeah,
make it a monster movie.
the funny thing about Judge Dredd is like, you know, the way that they portrayed it, like in 2000 AD, he was like the kind of the bad guy. Like he was like this like super right wing. Like
Oh
the
yeah,
stories were like a commentary on like fascism in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Rather than
yeah, yeah. And police culture itself. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, man.
and that kind of got lost in translation, I think, when they started making films out of it and people started looking back on it.
Oh yeah, that's how it always goes. It's like, oh, let's not make the police the bad guy and stuff. It's propaganda, I think is what they call
Propaganda.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. So as far as like people buying artwork of yours online and finding you, you know, to follow you and figure out what's going on, what's your handles like on social media or websites? Like, you know, how can people catch up with you?
If you just put in Jeremy Hush, I'll come up on most things. But it's mostly like it's mostly Instagram is the main thing I use, and a little bit of Facebook and stuff. But that's my main thing. You can find everything there.
Yeah, I pretty much gave up on Facebook, man. The only, I mean, I exist on that, but I never really use it except for posting stuff for the band or for, you know, the podcasts, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. It's not something I'm really on too much. It's mostly posts from Instagram onto there. So
Yeah, no, I'm lazy that way too, man. I, you know,
yeah,
try to minimize that. But yeah.
yeah,
Well, thanks a
yeah.
lot,
You never
man.
got
It's
much into it.
it is now do you also have an online store because there's stuff you can buy like if you want to buy prints and things like that,
Yeah, that's just jeremyhush.com.
and then you can get to the store. Okay, great. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you know the holidays are coming up, and this is one of the final episodes of 2023 before we hit you know Christmas and New Year's. So anyone out there who wants to give a gift to a loved one, definitely check out some of this artwork. It'd be a nice gift. You know what I mean?
Heck yeah.
All right, Jeremy. Thanks a lot, man. And you know, have a great holiday, and I'll catch up to you soon.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. See you later.
You got it, Jeremy. Take care. Bye.